Okay, my apologies. We have a part 2 now. My computer unplugged. So, anyways, nothing has changed since the first video. I just had to make a new video. So we're still on track. We just did a whitewash over this one, which... Okay, so what we're going to do first is take the yellow. Yes, the yellow. Please start with the yellow. And we're going to do like the same thing that we just did over there, over here, except this is going to stay white, this stays white. We're just painting the petals and the stems. Cool, so I'm going to start. I need a little more yellow in there. You might find that it's a little too light. We need some more yellow. I don't know if you can tell how yellow mine is from the camera, but aim for this. So I'm going to paint over the whole flower. And you can be a little tiny bit messy when you do this. Not to say you can get all the lines, but you know, I'm not being exactly precise. We're just worried about covering a large area of the painting right now. If you need to get into tight spots, you can kind of swivel your brush. See how I get that? Like I have different strokes here. Like I have a flat, like a large stroke, and I have like a smaller one. And if you get the hang of this, you can start to kind of swivel your brush as you're painting to do that. I'm already running out of some of my color here, so I'm going to add some more water and pigment. You probably have to do this a couple times. There we go. Awesome, cool. Great, look at that. You got your first layer on your flower. Very exciting. So, what we're going to do next is go back to this guy. So before we painted the whole thing. Now the next step is to skip over number 1. So number 1, that section is totally done. We're not touching it again. This time we're going to paint everything except the number 1 space. So I'm painting all this down here, and I'm going to start at number 2 and do another swipe right there. So I'm going to add a little bit more color and water here again, just so I'm ready to go. So see, I'm starting at number 2. And I'm being careful not to get into number 1 with my brush. You can see how it's getting darker because I added a layer. Yay! Look at that. Awesome. And then starting at number 2 and do another slice. Might need to. Might run out of some paint at the end. Awesome. So now you can see how, whoa, that looks like the sky because it's lighter than all the other mountains already. Pretty cool. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do on our flower is going to require us to kind of manipulate our yellow color a little bit. What we're going to do is add a little bit of red to our yellow. And I think before I said orange, brain fart, I think we're using red and yellow to make orange as we go on. So cool. It's fine that you have that mix, don't worry about it. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. And now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of this red on the corner of my brush. See, I don't have a whole lot, and add it into my yellow. Kind of mix it in. So this is going to help us build texture in our painting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush these petals and kind of like follow the lines of the petals. And see, I'm just kind of like darkening some of this again, adding some depth to it. We got a new color in there, so it's looking good. Well, awesome. So while that's still a little bit wet, I need to make some more yellow here, but I'm going to grab some more red and make this kind of light orangey color, and then add a couple more streaks. And these streaks, they can kind of be separated from the rest. So you see how I did like 1, 2, 3 swipes instead of covering the whole thing this time. So I'm adding texture and some more color and depth to my painting. Alright, cool. It's got to sit. So let's do the next layer on our aerial perspective. Need to make some more green. Okay, so you probably already assumed this. Mine's still a little damp, but we're going to call it good. But now we're going to ignore number 2 and number 1, and we're going to paint everything else. So I'm going to paint 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you're using this paper on and you taped it down, you can probably notice that both of them are kind of bubbling up now because of all the water in them. It's kind of making the paper warp even though we have the tape on it. So this is why it's important that we tape them down. Alright, cool. Not a huge difference, but still a difference. And I'm going to start at 3 and do my swipe down on the scale. Awesome. Oh, okay, I put too much water in mine. Don't do what I did. I got a little water happy. I'm going to pick some of that up. You can always take a towel and like really lightly dab these sometimes if you see how I have water concentrated because of my paper warping? You can kind of dab some of that up. And I don't recommend doing this all the time, but in my case, I've got big bubbles happening and I don't want it. Cool, so I'm going to let this sit for a second and dry. Okay, cool, so I just paused my video and let this dry for 2 minutes and it's awesome. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to mix even, oh shoot, I grabbed the wrong color. Even more of this orange color with the red and the yellow. You can see mine right here is kind of like it's a nice orange. I don't really know what color it is, but it's like a dull coral. Okay, cool. So I'm going to add another layer of my streaks, and you notice that I'm like starting from the center every time. It just helps with the direction of our brushes, and yeah, I recommend that you start in the center. Ooh, I maybe got a little too dark there. I'm going to add some more yellow and water it down. Cool thing about watercolors, if you get too dark, you can kind of like take some of the pigment out of your brush, get it a little bit dry, and spread out what's already on the page so it doesn't look like so much of a crazy difference or accident. There we go. I feel like I'm always running out of the paint. We'll find. Yeah, I ran out. Gotta mix some more real quick. you're going to be like an expert on mixing paint after this project, probably. Ooh, look at that. Yay, lots of texture. And we talk about visual texture a lot, and this painting is one that has a lot of visual texture. Cool. So as we go on now, I'm going to start trying to darken my flower, but I'm going to not go all the way to the end of the petal. We're going to do this because it kind of gives the flower some depth, so I can really tell like the middle of my flower is curving in. You know, if you had a flower and you looked at it and you have a flower like this that kind of like goes in, you know, some flowers, they are wider further apart, the petals are, so you don't really have this kind of the same depth as you do with a flower like this. But if you have a flower like this, if you were holding it in front of your face, you could tell that as I go into the flower, the colors get darker and darker, possibly not just because of the color in the petal, but because of the light. You know, when we have things, the petals aren't facing outward, they're inward, the stems are blocking the light from getting in, so it's going to be darker on the inside. So yeah, we will do that next, but let's do another mountain layer. Alright, cool. For our next mountain layer, probably guessed it again, we're going to skip 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to start at 4. So I'm going to get my paint ready and start at number 4. And remember not to go on number 2 and 3. If you do it by accident, don't worry. It's okay. But try your best. Awesome. Cool. So I've got my paper covered from 4 through 9. And now all I need to do is update my value scale down here. So add a layer on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can really tell down here how the values change. And this is just from us layering, because my color on my palette is pretty much the same each time. So you all can really tell how layering helps. Okay, so we're going to do another layer on the flower. Going to add some more red to my yellow. And this time I'm going to start adding some more streaks, but I'm not going to go all the way up the petal. We're just going to kind of let it fade out a little bit. And you see how I'm like getting these little brushy textures? Those are going to be really nice for the texture of our petal. Because if you look at the petal, they kind of have that, they have those little lines in them. Alright. Cool. Let's check this. I think we can do one more layer on this before we go for the aerial perspective again. Now when I do this, I'm like very lightly, I'm not pressing my brush down hard. You can see my bristles are barely even moving, they're like slanting. I'm just trying to add some movement to this. I went pretty far up on that one, but I didn't really like that petal, so I'm trying to redeem it. Alright, so let me see. A trick to watercolor is that you can use this part of your finger. Like if I bend my finger, I have this flat middle part, and you can press it down. That's like a really sensitive part of your finger, so it can really tell temperature You know, I'm not saying you can be like, oh, 98.3. But if it's still really cold, your paper might still be really wet. So that's a really cool trick that you can use when you are using watercolor. I'm going to give it a minute. Okay, so now we're going to move on with our aerial perspective painting. So now I've done 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now I'm going to do 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So start at 5. And then kind of paint the rest of it. Now I'm going over here into number 6. Whoa. I don't know, I like doing this. It's kind of cool to see all the colors change as you go on. And then, of course, I've got my value scale. So I'm going to start at 5 and paint. Awesome. Yay. So now we can go back over to our flower. I'm going to mix another color, and this one, each time I'm mixing a color, I'm kind of like going more and more. Oh, I keep putting my brush in the orange, but I'm going more and more red. Oops. Cool, so you can see my color has kind of really changed. Do you remember our dry brush technique where you want the brush to be a little bit dry? That might help for this one, although I feel like I could go a little darker with my pigments. But, I mean, if you can tell the correlation between these two. We're kind of working on these at the same time, so you can tell that as I add color, it gets darker, and it's the same for this one. Although I'm kind of creating a darker pigment every time I go, the fact that I'm layering my colors is also really helping me create depth and the illusion that this is getting darker and darker as it goes on. Cool. There we go. Awesome. So, I'm going to do another layer. Just do another layer. As you go on, you can kind of like use your judgment to see if you have enough depth going on. I'm getting pretty red. I'm going to go back to an orangey color here. Ooh, so this color is really adding lots of depth. Look at that, that's awesome. I'm not going to go super far with this color on these. Cool. So you can kind of bring up some of these colors into the flower to tie it all together. See, even though I'm doing this, I still have my darker pigments down here. I'm just adding some more texture up here. Wow. Awesome. See how this is doing. Still pretty wet. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my round brush for a little bit because I have a lot of really broad strokes, but I know that I kind of want to add in some more depth and darkness kind of in this area. So I'm going to make a red, orange, that's a little more red than is orange, and start to, that's a little too much for me, start to brush here. And you can use the side of this brush to create depth too, or to create a larger brush stroke that will kind of blend in up here, but still kind of dark in the middle. Cool. What we're going to do next is kind of start to paint these little stems here. We want to kind of stay in the lines for these. This is our first go over with them. We'll go over them again. So if it's a little too white, don't fret. We will be layering like we love to. Adding a little bit of darkness down there because it's like the center of my flower. And you can go through and add some texture with this brush too, like we have done. Cool. Alright, so that's looking good. I'm going to say it's about time to do another layer on the aerial perspective. Gotta mix some more green because I ran out last time. So now we're going to start at 6. So we are going to ignore 1 through 5. And 6 is this kind of volcano-y looking one here in the middle. We will start there. Layer over everything else. Whoa. Alright, and then the next step, start at 6, paint over to 9. Cool. Alright, I'm going to pause and let this dry for probably 2 or 3 minutes, so if you want, you can do the same. Okay, so let's do some more work on the flower. One thing I'm going to do is define some of these edges, because right now I've got my pencil mark there. Obviously, my marks are kind of dark. I wish I did them lighter. But you can kind of define some of the edges by painting over them. And you can see I kind of went over the edge on this one, so I'm just going to kind of like pretend that this is my new line and try to fade that line out by painting this new edge. Cool. And that looks kind of rigid, so you can get some water and kind of blend that in so it looks a little more natural. Awesome. Whoa. Kind of paint on the edges here. See how I'm grabbing some water and I'm blending this over so it looks natural. Because those super rigid lines don't really look great. Since I have 2 flower petals meeting right here, I kind of really want to define this one up front to make it pop. See how that line right there just like made a huge difference? And then this one, blend and shade it up. Awesome, so I defined my edges a little bit, and now what I'm going to do is grab some red, and these kind of flowers have little speckles on them. So I'm going to go through and kind of add some speckles to it. These will kind of blend in because my paint's a little bit wet, so might make them look a little more natural. And you can take and do the paper towel method that we've been doing and kind of like stamp some of this out too to create a little bit of a texture. You can see my speckles are a little bit long, and you can kind of place them throughout, kind of make them random. I'm going to fade some of mine out a little bit. Cool, see when I faded those out, they started to look a little more natural because I added some texture to them. Awesome, and I'm going to go through and do another layer of this red orange on my stems to make those pop again because they're kind of starting to fade into the background as I've added more emphasis to the things around it. Alright, cool. So let's add another layer to our atmospheric perspective. We're almost done. We're on number 7. We only have 2 more after that. So I'm going to grab some green and start at number 7. So I'm ignoring 1 through 6. So I basically kind of got like just the bottom half of this painting to finish now. And we're just doing a thin layer. Spread all that paint out. Awesome. And then go to number 7 and do a swipe. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is fill in some of these spaces on the flower. We'll do some final touches on the flower in a little bit. I'm going to use my blue and add a little bit of green to it. I'm mixing right on my palette. I'm kind of messy. You can do it over here too. But that's going to create a really nice kind of dark teal color that'll make the flower pop behind it. So you can see I'm just filling in all the white spaces. And you can go in here and kind of redefine those areas that you went outside of the lines on. And pretend you never did it. And I'm using my smaller brush to do this. It's just easier to get into all those little crevices than it would be if I was using my flat brush. But if you have a smaller flat brush, you can use that too. The round brushes are pretty, I think they're easier to do this with though. Okay, so now I want to watch out for that stem. I'm going to paint around it. Awesome. So blue and orange are complementary colors, of course, and that's kind of why we're using this teal color to really make that orange pop. So this is another reason why, complementary colors and thinking about color schemes is really important while you're making art. Cool, look at that, my flower is open. I feel like that was really lame that I just said that. Okay, I'm gonna grab some just straight up red and do some more work on my stems because if I'm gonna be honest, I'm not real happy with my stems and I think they need to be a lot darker. So I'm just gonna use some straight up red. If you're finding that your painting is not, it doesn't have a lot of depth to it, your colors are too light, you just gotta layer. So you might have to do some work on your own, working on layering some of these some more. Cool, and I'm gonna go back through, you can add some more details, I can do a couple more of those little lines. Add some more depth down here. Some of these flowers. Awesome. Alright, so let's do another layer on our aerial perspective. Alright, so I'm going to grab my brush, and this time we're doing 8 and 9. So it's our last two sections. When you get down to 9, you are going to have a lot of little squiggly lines. It'll be helpful to use the tip of your flat brush for this, or if you're using a round brush, that might help a little more because they have a more designated kind of pointed end. I thought I was on the wrong mountain for a second. Awesome, so there's 8 and 9, and then I'm gonna sweat my brush. And while I'm waiting on that last layer to dry, you can do a little bit more kind of detail work on this one. I think I'm gonna go back through my background again, just so I can define all those edges. Cool. Maybe add some more depth to the flower itself. Cool. Alright, so I'm calling my flower good. The last thing I need to do is layer number 9 on my aerial perspective drawing. So I'm going to use my smaller brush for this one because I have all these little crevices to get into because I only have layer number 9 left. And we don't have to do like the full wash on the whole thing. So this brush is really going to help me get into all those little details. Awesome. Cool, and then I'm going to take my flat brush and do those last couple swipes. Just on the ends right there. Look at that. And then you go number 9 and add a layer. And you're done. So the cool thing about this is, I mean, it's cool for a lot of reasons, but this is kind of like a mountain range or like some hills if you were looking at them and then you're looking off into the distance. It looks like each of them is at a different distance from you. And when we started this, if you remember, it was just kind of like a flat drawing, and now it has a lot of depth. So layering with watercolor is really important because of this. We can tell in our flower drawing too that it was important. So cool. Today we have achieved a lot of understanding of depth and texture and how to use our watercolor paints. Awesome. So after you finish this, upload a picture. You can email me or text me on Remind 101 if you have any questions. I hope it was fun. Watercolor can be a really cool skill to have. It's fun to watercolor when you get bored. Cool. So yeah, message me if you have any questions.